Hello, everyone,
Hello.
and welcome to another episode of.
The Super Data Brothers Super Show.
That's right. I am Ryan,
And I am Eric.
and we are real life brothers who work in the data and analytics industry. And we always have to call that out because we get asked a lot, are you guys really brothers? And the answer is yes.
Yes, we are really brothers.
Yep. So
half the people say you guys look like twins. Another half is like, no, I never would have thought you guys were brothers. It's like
it's really weird like that. Like we
Yeah.
get both, right? Are you twins or are you sure you're related?
Uh-huh.
Anyway, we have got a good one for you today, don't we, Eric?
For
We've got
sure.
Monica K. Royal from Nerd Nourishment to talk to us all about getting into data, of course, as a young person who's interested in it as a career,
Yeah.
but also as an established professional who's looking to transition to a data career.
That's
She is
true.
an expert in this, and I'm really looking forward to talking to her
Yeah,
about it.
you know, I'm really excited for today's show because this is something we get asked in like half of our streams, right? Even if it's
Yeah.
not the topic, right? What BI tool should I learn? What should I learn? We get asked it all the time. And in my personal life, like one of my friends, Christopher, if you're watching this, Chris, hi. He's
Shout
not
out,
watching
Joe.
this. He's not. There's no way he's watching this. But yeah, he asked me just like a month ago, like how do I break in? And I gave him my rundown. So it'd be nice to talk to someone who's an expert, and maybe I'll forward this video to him afterwards. So yeah, I'm excited for today's show.
Awesome. So with that said, brief things to go over before we bring Monica on. First of all, meet the Super Data Brothers. That's right. We are going to be at Data Day, Texas in January 27th, 2024. This is one of our absolute favorite conferences because it is one day, it is practitioner focused, it is no BS, and you can meet us and a ton of other really great data folks there. A lot of people who we've had on the show, like Shantona Tully, Joe Reese,
Yep.
all sorts of awesome people are going to be there, and we look forward to seeing you there too. Use the code Super Data Brothers, all one word, when you register for Data Day Texas to get a 20% discount on your registration. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you there January 27th of next year. Also, some event in Detroit TBD this fall. Every week I say this, and every week I have nothing to report about when this event is going to be. But we are going to have a live in-person event for those of you who are located in the Detroit area in order to help jumpstart the data scene out here, because it's a little dead right now, folks. So we are going to do that in conjunction, I'm sure, with Aaron Wilkerson, who, if you go back a few episodes, you can see our interview with Aaron there. Awesome dude, also fellow Detroiter. So some event in Detroit, TBD this fall. Meet the Super Data Brothers. Okay. And then finally, of course, we have to thank today's sponsor, Digital Hive. Digital Hive is an analytics catalog. What is an analytics catalog, you ask? Well, I'm sure you're familiar with a data catalog, which catalogs your tables and metrics and assets like that. An analytics catalog does the same thing for the stuff that your users actually interact with, which in some ways is more important, I think. It brings all of your BI tools together into a single searchable portal, but beyond just letting them search and find things, it actually enables people to take the best parts of the best dashboards and reports, chart here from Tableau, chart here from Qlik, chart here from Power BI, bring them all together into a single new dashboard, and then allows you to put in some cross-dashboard filters over the top so that you can take the most useful nuggets of information and assemble them like Voltron into a super dashboard that is assembled from all the best pieces of all of your BI tools in one place. If any of you, and I know we have a lot of people in the audience who work at very large companies, any of you who work at a huge enterprise know that you have 8, 10, 15, 35 BI tools, and you are never going to whittle them down to one. It's a fool's errand. What you should do instead is come up with a way to get the best insights out of them into one searchable place, and that is Digital Hive. So thank you, Digital Hive, for sponsoring today's episode. And of course, we're coming up right on it, folks. Jazz Up Your Analytics in New Orleans, October 30th through November 1st. This is an OBS conference for analytics leaders focused on DevOps for analytics and topics like, hey, I've got 5 BI tools. What should I do, right? So check it out. Scan the QR code here. Check out Digital Hive and the Jazz Up Your Analytics conference. And once again, thank you to Digital Hive for sponsoring today's episode. I hear the sounds of a child through this door. So let's see what's about to happen here. I don't know. This is the advantages of doing a live show. Okay. Thank you, Digital Hive. So without further ado, let's bring Monica on to talk about transitioning to a data analytics career. Monica, welcome to the Super Data Brothers show.
Hello, so glad to be here talking with the Super Data Brothers.
Yeah, it's awesome. We were talking
welcome.
in pre-show about how Monica's color coordinated and more on brand than we are with the Super Data Brothers logo. So very well done, Monica.
I'm just wearing a random con shirt.
I'm wearing like random vendor shirt too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Data Wars. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yep. This is a trifecta shirt. Cool. So Monica, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and Nerd Nourishment and kind of your story about how you got into data and started Nerd Nourishment?
Yes, absolutely. So I am Monica K. Royal. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and it is still pretty much summer over here, but I'm loving it. It is cooling down. It's like 80s now. So
yeah, it's getting cool. Yeah.
Yes, 80s. Yes, very good. Yeah, so my background, I started my career in audit, right? Like every other millennial data professional out there, I have a very unique data journey. And yeah, so I started out as an auditor. So my background really is in security, risk, and compliance. And when I went to school, didn't know anything about data. Data wasn't taught to us in school. I had to basically learn about it on my own at my career. And when I learned about it, I was like, data is awesome. I need to do this. And so I just started working on projects and understanding more about data, how I can use it. And yeah, that's how I entered and started using data.
Do you remember like what was it? Do you recall when you were like, what was it that first attracted you to it? Right, like you didn't have a background. I'm similar. I don't have a background in data, like education wise, and my early career wasn't in data. What was it where you said, you know what, I think this is something I actually want to do?
Yeah. So I was an IT auditor. So what I did was test different systems within a company to make sure those systems were working appropriately. So think of like your passwords, making sure that those were configured and captured correctly, right? I really liked helping other teams. So I asked to help out on the financial audit team, and they had me working with trying to identify revenue fraud. And didn't really know anything about that. And they taught me this system that they used called IDEA. And so they downloaded all of the revenue data, put it into this system. And then they used what was called Benford's Law to analyze and spit out whether or not there were any anomalies in their revenue data to then investigate if there was fraud happening. And once I learned more about this, I was like, oh, what is this data you say? And that's kind of where it kicked off.
Now, did you start, like, did you kind of have maybe a lot of people come to data, like the entry point is obviously Excel. Was that like, were you like an Excel wizard first?
So that's funny. I got Excel certified when I was in high school.
Nice.
So everyone used Excel in high school. So when I see on LinkedIn and whatnot, like these people that don't use Excel at all and are learning how to use Excel, that just boggles my mind, to be honest. I'm like, I've been using Excel since I was born. Like, I don't really.
I had a class in high school on Excel too. So yeah. Ryan was busy taking theater classes.
That's true.
Okay.
I didn't.
That's awesome.
I actually suck at Excel. People are often surprised. Like they'll be like, "Hey, here's the spreadsheet. Could you do X, Y, and Z?" And I'm like, "I'll call my wife. I don't know how to do it." Right. My wife is an Excel genius, and I
made it. I made a spreadsheet for everything, though. I also did the arts. I was in band and dance. So
nice.
Both backgrounds.
Cool. So tell us about Nerd Nourishment.
Yeah, so Nerd Nourishment has also been on a journey. It started off, I guess, as a hashtag on LinkedIn back in, I think, 2019. I started actually contributing on LinkedIn. And I started doing a 100 days of code, but I like learning. So it was just 100 days of learning and just sharing anything that I was learning from whatever sources, books, radio, podcasts, what have you. And after the 100 days was over, I was like, well, I kind of want to still continue this and trying to find a way to do that. At the time, everyone had their own personal hashtags. You kind of see it still, but it was like huge back then. And so I wanted my own personal hashtag and created Nerd Nourishment.
Gotcha. And that has kind of, I mean, you now do a show and all sorts of stuff, right?
Yes. So it went from a hashtag to a blog. And then I created my podcast and now offering mentoring services for those that want to get a data career. And who knows what's next?
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's one of the things I think that's, one of the reasons why we were so keen to talk to you is I think there's a lot of advice out there for people who and avenues too for really young people to get into data. Like there was no even 12 years ago, 13 years ago when I took night school to kind of transition from theater into data. And there were really no even like data classes 13 years ago. Like there was a database class where you could learn some SQL, right? And there might be like a single lecture on analytics and data warehousing, but there was no like, nowadays we've got, you can get a master's degree in analytics and data science and PhD in these things. Back then, so there are avenues for a young person who says like, you know what, I just want to get into this. I'm interested in it. I hear it's a great career. I'm going to major in it. Right. There's a lot of advice out there for them, but what about for people who are already established in a career doing something else, right? And want to move into data. And I think that's where you have great advice and a really interesting perspective. So let's start with there. Like, okay, let's say someone watching this says, I'm in audit, or I work in finance, or I'm a supply chain analyst or whatever. And I would like to, like, this data thing seems neat. I would like to try it. How do they start?
So we talked a little bit pre-show, just do it, right? Yeah. I say just do it, right? Everyone being 2023, everyone has access to some type of data in whether it be at their job or even in their personal lives. You have some kind of data set that you have access to. So just play around with it and see if you actually like it. So it provides kind of two benefits, right? You're in your current career and you have access to a data set at your job, right? Grab that data set, just start playing around with it. Then you figure out, do I even like data? Is this even the sexiest job, as per se, everyone says, right?
Right.
So you get to test it out yourself. And then two, if you do like it, then you can start actually building out your portfolio with real life data without having to, do courses or, find projects online or anything like that. You can do it in real life, real time.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, Mike Norris, theater to data. No wonder Ryan loves storytelling. Yeah. Yeah. Good to have you here, Mike. That was what, that Mike, that is what attracted me to it, actually, of all the, because I just got when I went to night school, I just got a general information systems kind of.
Are you sure it wasn't something else that attracted you, Ryan?
Well, yeah, yes, this was number one, but but why data versus, I took all the classes, right? I took a networking class. I took like programming classes. The thing about data that appealed to me, and I think appeals to a lot of people, was like that it felt like it was where technology actually interacts with human beings, right? In a way, like where you do tell a story, where you have the opportunity to like influence decisions that people are making. And and also solve neat technical problems. But like that was, I don't know. That was to your point, Mike. Yes, that was like I can remember early on thinking like, actually in some weird ways, building an OLAP cube is like writing a play. In some weird ways, that made sense to me at the time. Anyway, yeah, I mean, and so that actually brings up an interesting question too. Like, what advantages, Monica, do you think someone who has already an established career can bring to data? Like, how should they think about themselves in that way, and like telling their story, the story of their move, kind of using their existing career as a springboard or the advantage it gives them?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say it all boils down to something that a lot of data professionals kind of don't focus on, and that's the soft skills and the domain knowledge. So if you're already in a particular industry and you've been working there for a decade, you have piled up a lot of experience in that domain. You know how the business works, its ins and outs, what attracts customers, and etc. So if you then use data coupled with that domain knowledge, then you'll be able to create all kinds of different insights and solving problems.
Yeah. And I think we see this big time, like in just the data conversation in general. The last 8 months has really pivoted towards like, yes, it's important to know all the technical stuff, right? That's kind of bedrock. You need to have it. But the real question, and this is where like career transitioners, I think, can add a lot of value, and they really need to think about this, is like why are we building any of this stuff in the first place? Let me ask you, I'm very curious because I know you've coached some people through this. You talk to a lot of people who've done it, like through Nourishment in your podcast. What are the top fears that you see of people who want to make this move, right? And how should they address those fears?
I love that. So a top fear that I'm seeing a lot is that the grass is not greener on the other side. So people are going to get this data job and then realize that it sucks too. And so that is why even my advice of figuring out if you like data first by using it at your current job helps out with this fear.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And do you think, Eric, did you have something to add?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Do you?
I was, but you sound like you have a good segue. Mine was
no, go for it.
Left turn. Okay, so talking about like people trying to transition from their current career and like their fears and all of that. So I get asked from some of my friends who like see that I work from home all the time. Like, how do I do that? Like Christopher, I mentioned earlier. So here's his exact message he sent me about a month and a half ago. Okay, if you were to hire me, what classes certs would I need? Lol. So like what if someone is trying to make that transition, like two things, like what resources should they look into and what pitfalls are there? Because in my mind, looking at certs is a pitfall. Like, is that true in your experience? Or
right now there aren't a lot of generalized certifications. There are, Google, AWS, like the cloud stuff that's really popular, or some niche like your Tableau desktop specialization certificate and all of that. Those are very centered around a specific tool. And what's hard about that is that tools are very dependent on what company that you're working for. Not everybody has Tableau. Maybe they have Power BI. Maybe they're still hanging out in the Excel world. And then maybe they haven't, ventured into the cloud yet. And so therefore they don't have any of those cloud certifications that would be available to you. And so those general questions like that are super, super hard to answer without understanding more information about like, where are you trying to work and what skills do you already have that you can leverage?
Gotcha. Do you think in general though, is like the cert first approach, is that really differentiating at this point? Or is that what you would recommend someone do, is like, oh, just go get some certs? Or is that not really, yeah.
Not
That face
unless
says
it was
no
a
way.
yeah, no, not unless it was a requirement for a particular position.
Yeah.
So to give an example, since I started out in audit in public accounting firms, it's good for you to have a CPA, right?
Yeah.
You get credibility because you are performing audits at different companies, and also you get a bonus from a lot of the public accounting firms for getting that certification. So I have that certification. I am technically a CPA certified individual. Have I used it? Not really. I mean, less and less, especially since I have gotten out of the audit world. However, having that has made me passionate about the concept of continuous learning. This is kind of a tangent, but still related. With those types of certifications, you're required to get CPE, so continued professional education, I think it is.
Yeah.
So you have to take, different courses that are certified to just keep up with the times and how regulations are changing, really, because in the audit world, it's all centered around regulations. What I have not seen is something similar in the data realm. I think Informs is the only one that is kind of going in that direction, but they're not as popular. Like, have you heard of Informs?
I haven't. No.
Okay.
No,
Yeah.
first time.
Yeah. So there
Yeah.
needs to be one.
I know, maybe a decade ago, like TDWI, the Data Warehouse Institute, and I'm sure they still offer it. They have like a certified business intelligence professional that I know some people who got, but I haven't heard about that one in a long time. I don't know if that's still something people go for or not.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that.
Yeah, like it's,
in a while either.
I mean, this is kind of an interesting, topic that is just the idea of like professionalization of data and how, we're not like, this is something that we've talked with Joe Reese about a few times and others.
Yeah.
It's just like how data is, it's not like accounting, right? Like, or actuarial science or these other things where there's like, it's laid out. There's an expectation that everybody in this field is going to have the same basic toolkit of knowledge to draw from and work from the same standards. It's not like that. And that's good and bad, right? It gives us lots of innovation. The flip side is, you find yourself in situations where like, we were kind of talking about DBT a little bit pre-show, and all like the whole DBT scene, none of them seem to have known anything about data warehousing, like standard data warehousing, Kimball star schemas and that sort of thing until very recently. And that's kind of because we don't have, you're not required to meet all these professional standards before you can call yourself a data engineer. And that, it's good and bad, but to today's topic, what it means is that there is no super high educational barrier of entry for those of you who are looking to make this transition. But the flip side is there's no guaranteed roadmap.
Yeah.
Right? Where if you just check off all the boxes, you will officially be a data person, right? It's like there's a lot more you need to figure out.
Yeah, you kind of just got to pick which direction to swim and go that way. Right? It's not like becoming like, I don't know, like a registered nurse or something. Like if you want to become a registered nurse, you can look up what
there's
to
a
do.
registry.
There's a registry.
There's get on the registry.
There's no registered SQL writer, right?
Right. Do you find, what is the technical skill the most daunting thing? Like when people are making this transition, is it just like they worry the most about like, oh, am I good enough at? Is it the technical piece or is it?
I don't know about daunting, but definitely time consuming, especially if you don't have that background, if you don't already have SQL experience, or if you want to venture into Python, you don't know anything about coding, then you're starting from ground level, and it does take a lot of time to learn those different concepts. But with coding and whatnot, at least that has more of a roadmap, I
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
there are courses that you can take that will teach you those skills.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, they're like tutorials and stuff. There's no
Yes.
tutorial for like how to successfully manage like a relationship with a business user when we're writing reports for them. Like there's no real guide written for that, except for this show, of course.
Yes, that's right. We would talk about it a lot on this show.
That's for sure.
So what? So let's say, do you think? I mean, obviously, so we've talked a lot about how it's not just about your skills and the unique thing you bring as someone making a career transition. But let's focus on the skills for just a second. I mean, what? If someone comes to you and says, "Okay, this is something I want to do," like what foundational skills should I have? Like, what would you tell them as far as, okay, go learn X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. So I like to focus on the soft skills because I think that those are more helpful in the world. And getting you to be able to accomplish and share with your stakeholders and whatnot, right? So what I call them transferable skills are ones that you already probably have in your career now that are directly related and can be leveraged in a data career. And those being like communication, adaptability, problem solving. There's two others that I have. I have a blog article about these and how they relate to certain careers that you wouldn't think are data related. One of my go-tos is a hairstylist.
I want to hear about this.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So with a hairstylist, they're already data professionals and they just don't know it, right? So with the adaptability, problem solving, communication, again, I forget the two off the top of my head. I should have looked them up. But with you sit down, right, as a client getting your hair cut. So you're the stakeholder, right? You're trying to share, this is what I want. And as the hairstylist or the data person, you are getting those business requirements from the stakeholder. And then with your professional opinion, you know whether or not that would be acceptable. If your hair is, you can't have your hair too short with your face shape, or if you want a certain color with your certain skin tone might look a little funny, or, so you're accepting those business requirements and then sharing or communicating your expertise on what you have seen be successful in the skirts.
That is like a great analogy for what data people do. Like, and what makes data different from like, software development or network engineering or that sort of thing is like, there is this translation of what a non-technical person wants, you know, and that is where I think the best data people set themselves apart is not in like, oh, I can write the most complicated SQL query, right? But in like, I can write a SQL query that translates what someone told me they wanted to what they need.
Yeah, like the way I'd describe it is like the ability to work with someone to get something they're happy with, even if they don't know what they want, right? Like they have a vague feeling of what they want, and you're able to like work with them to be able to like generate like something that'll actually make them happy, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And Ryan,
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Monica.
I was just gonna say, and Ryan, with your shout out to the SQL queries, whether or not you are able to build them efficiently is the same thing with the cutting, the actual skills of cutting the hair. You can just be able to cut hair. You can know how to write a SQL query. But if you're really good at those cutting skills, the technical skills of cutting, then you can make it more efficient. Maybe you can cut it faster or make some very, very intricate design.
This is maybe my favorite new analogy for data is the hairstylist. Like this, I think is quite apt actually. And it really does fit because that is exactly it, right? Like you can be the best technical hair cutter, right? At manipulating scissors and a comb. But if you have no eye, if you have no experience, if you have no idea what looks good with what, or what people want in the real world, it doesn't make any difference.
Yep.
Yeah, that's really
Yeah.
good.
So one thing, because I think this has been useful to me and might be useful to others. Like, do you advise that like people try to like create some sort of like social media presence in order like to kind of put themselves out there? Because I was thinking like if I was interviewing someone and like they had a YouTube channel, even if no one watched it, when they were making
Mhm.
tutorials, like that would be a big plus in my eyes. Like, do you like suggest that sort of thing for people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I live on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
So a lot of networking involved. There are ways that you can put your portfolio and highlight projects that you've worked on. I do also have a YouTube channel. And so having tutorial videos or just showing what you're building, build in public. I think I've heard a few folks say. I
Okay.
really love that.
I haven't heard that before. That's a good way to
Yes.
frame it, though.
Yes. So just sharing a project that you're working on and actually just recording yourself building it out. What problems do you face? What kind of troubleshooting do you have to go through? And it may look a little messy, and may be boring to some, but when you go through and you explain that and you show that and you put yourself out there, you feel more comfortable than presenting that end product.
Yeah. And does that become like, I can see, first of all, it's helpful like when you actually get into an interview and someone says, okay, show me what you did. Like you've already put it out there. You've already explained it on YouTube or LinkedIn or whatever. Do you find like our portfolios and projects, are those useful recruiting tools as well? Like would you recommend everybody do that as they're trying to make this transition?
I do recommend putting together projects. Not for the sake of putting together projects and just throwing it out there, but really understanding what the project is about and what problems that you're solving with that project. You can't just be like, oh, I used SQL, here it is. Talk about the techniques that you used. The data cleaning is really huge. All of the processes that you go through and those foundational skills that you had to use to get to that final product.
Gotcha. And then you would host that somewhere in public and just say, here it is, right?
Shoot it out there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Maybe put a link on your resume or something. I don't know.
Yep.
Gotcha.
That's what I would do.
How do you recommend people? I mean, so let's say you've built you've got a portfolio out there, how do you recommend people go out and start to get attention with it? I mean, would you, share it on LinkedIn? Would you like, what are the steps you take there to help you get it noticed?
However you feel resonates with you. So I've seen people that are on TikTok now making educational content. I don't know if I would ever venture into TikTok soon because of me being a security nerd, but that's another story.
Oh yeah, right. Yes.
I don't want to.
But yeah, like there's literally today, there's so many different ways that you can highlight and put your portfolios out there. Like a decade or so ago, it was just GitHub, right? I don't know if GitHub is still the number one place to put all of your portfolios. It's still a really beneficial and helpful tool, of course, but there's other places and other really cool ways to explore, and maybe putting it out in other platforms would help with those soft skills.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really interesting point too, is like, you may not want to put your work on social media, but as a data person, your work is not just the code, it's the communication, it's the understanding, and like putting your stuff out there on social media. To Eric's point, even if nobody really watches, will give you at bats explaining it. So when it comes time to explain it, when it really matters, it won't be the first time you've had to do it.
Yeah. So then I have a topic of discussion or question for both you, Ryan, and Monica, because Ryan, you have a writing history, and Monica's
Yeah.
is a bit of your area of expertise. But we're talking about soft skills. Now, one of the main differentiators I've noticed in date professionals is straight up just writing, right? Just straight up writing, right? So, would you say like weighing things out that like writing skills are one of the most important ones you could have, or
Yeah. Yeah, writing and communication go hand in hand, definitely for sure. While you're putting together these projects, it's really good to have also like a blog article that goes through and outlines step by step what you did. And then if you wanted to put on YouTube as well, communicating out, maybe reading, highlighting the blog post as well. So yes, and also with commenting your code, because you want to comment your code both for your teammates that are trying to leverage your code in the future, and also for your future self. If you have to go back maybe a couple months later, you'll always thank your past self for leaving you good comments.
Yeah, I am always mad at my past self because I look at
Oh,
things
yeah.
and I'm like, what the hell was this?
What
Like,
clown
why didn't
wrote
I-
this?
Yeah. I agree. I think, writing is thinking, right? And so if you I will often, like, even in, my day job at Good Data, I maintain like a story of what it is that we're trying to accomplish right now that I update, and it's just like a one-page narrative of like, what are we trying to do and why,
Mhm.
and then I go back to that to remind myself what it's a prioritization tool. It keeps us on target. It helps me keep in mind what is important and what is not important. And this, this works for anything, not just data. But yeah, I think it's really important to be able to, because when you have to write out what you're doing, it forces you to actually examine whether or not what you're doing makes sense.
Yeah,
You know?
because every idea is great in your head, right?
Yes.
And there's almost the fear that if you let it escape your head by writing it down, it'll ruin that great idea, because you're forced to see like, this is kind of dumb,
Right.
So that's kind of a skill. It's a good way. I think that's a good point, Ryan. That writing is thinking, right? Translate, because every idea in my head is one of the greatest things to ever exist. I start doing it, I'm like, no, this is kind of dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So what, let's say so we've kind of talked about, okay, how to get that first job, how to make that transition. But I think we're going to talk about, okay, like after that, what do you see sorts of experiences should people expect, and what challenges do they have? But before we move on to that, just any last, biggest piece of advice for someone who's kind of in the pre-data job stage. They think this is what they want to do, or they know it's what they want to do. They're trying to get there. What any last advice, before we move on?
Yeah, just try it out. See if you like it. You have your own personal data. Everyone has data on their smartphones and all of the applications that we use. Fairly easy to download your own personal data set and just start playing with it. See how many hours you spend on your phone and see if you can answer any fun questions about yourself. Therefore, then seeing if you actually like and want to pursue a data and career.
So really make sure that you want to do this.
You want to do this
before you do it.
Yeah. If it turns out you hate writing SQL and chatting with people about charts, maybe maybe this isn't the career transition for you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fine too, right? There's lots of I'm sure there's an element of people, because there's been so much hype around data jobs and marketing around it, and like, oh, we have a shortage of data. You remember, you go back 3 or 4 years, it was like, we have a shortage of data scientists. We'll never have enough data scientists. And like, you don't hear that anymore much. But yeah, I'm sure, whether or not the grass is greener, I think is something you can test out for yourself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you get to work from home more usually. So
I mean, that is my favorite part of the whole job, is the fact that I don't have to go to an office. So now let's say, okay, you've gone ahead, you've built the portfolio, you did the personal project, you got your stuff up on GitHub, you've made your TikToks where you dance and point to SQL statements, and now you have secured that first job as a data person. Okay, what sort of things, kind of now what? Like in your experience, people who are making this transition, what sort of pitfalls can they expect in the early stages of the data career, and what challenges might they face?
Yeah. I would say start collecting a list of resources, your go-tos, whether that be websites, books, people, any one or place that you could ask questions to that you can then figure out questions. Don't think that you have to know all of the answers to the questions, because nobody does. Even us people that have been out here for a long time, we still don't know the answers to questions. However, if we have a list of resources, we know where to go to find those answers.
And do you think, like, are people who are transitioning from other careers, I wonder if there's a danger of, like, you show up to some data department and, everyone here, you feel like everyone here has a degree in this, and like, I don't, and the imposter syndrome thing. Do I belong here? Do people who make this transition, do you think they experience that a lot? And if they are feeling that, what advice would you have?
Absolutely. I still experience it all the time. Like you can't get away from it. What you can do though is try to lean into it and just push through it.
Yeah, I guess the way I think of it is like, everyone's making it up as they go, so I'm doing fine,
Yes.
Yeah. And I think, people in that position too, like, you have to remind yourself that data is not, data careers are not networking, right? Where it's highly technical. It is highly technical, but like the real life experience you have, the domain knowledge you have, the time you have spent not staring at a screen, but like out working with people professionally, is a huge advantage in data, more so than any other technical field. And so, like, if you're one of these people who finds yourself in some, data engineering department or BI department, and you look around and you feel like, everyone here has been doing this a long time and they've studied this, they have degrees in this and I don't, like, that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is being able to talk to a business person and figure out what we need to build for this person. That's the most important thing. And your experience in the real world will give you that in a way that no amount of sitting in a classroom can possibly communicate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So go get it, folks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rah.
And remain curious. Ask lots and lots of questions. Don't think, again, don't think that it's bad for you not to know the answers. Ask questions, because you might bring up something that somebody thinks, oh, that's a really good question, and then figure out some really cool problems to solve.
Yeah. And I think there has been a shift. Like, I don't know if you've noticed it, but over the course of my career, I think when I started, things were there was much more like you didn't want to, there's just such a premium on technical skills, and like you didn't want to admit if you didn't know something, or you didn't want to admit when you were wrong. And I feel like the vibe has changed, and it's much more open and like, oh, I don't know that, can you please teach me? And like, whereas in like 2010 or whenever it was that I got my first job in BI, it was like, no, just pretend you already know this, right?
Yeah.
Even though you
oh
don't.
yeah I can let me get back to you on that.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
cool.
yeah.
When it comes to the specific technical skills that you see out there, I mean, we've talked a lot about, like, that's not what's going to set you apart, especially as someone making a career transition. Like, what makes you shine is your experience and your
domain knowledge,
and that sort of thing. But when it comes to specific technical skills, Do you see like is it the classic stuff like, look, learn SQL, learn a little Python, learn a Viz tool? Is that kind of, what you would say to people?
That's exactly what I would say. Yeah. And then again, be mindful that it might depend on the specific company that you work at. They might not use SQL. They might still be working in Excel spreadsheets a lot. They might definitely not even touch Python at all and only work in SQL. So just knowing foundational skills in areas that you personally want to explore yourself in your career, and then using that as a base to then build upon as you get different experiences.
Let me ask you this too. Like, what right now would you say, what is the hot title that you see people want to go for? Like, 5 years ago it was data scientist. Is it still that, or is it data engineer, or kind of what is the cool thing that everybody wants to try to be?
What should I update my LinkedIn
to say that I am, right?
To say that I am, even though I'm just a generic data person.
No, that's a good question. I've actually seen more highlighting on the data analyst, which is surprising because it was data scientist. A lot of data scientists then converted into data engineering because of the frustrations of trying to get the data that you need. So then just that, and then analytics engineer, right? That's a new one that's kind of up and coming, but I have seen a lot more focus on data analyst.
That is fascinating, and I personally like that because I think that role has just not gotten the love it deserves over the last few years. With all the focus on like building data pipelines and all this other stuff, and the data analyst to me is in many ways the most important person because they're the one who's actually working with the end users, understanding the challenges, the business challenges, and should be, is the person who can help the data engineer or the data scientist actually build the right thing. So that's really interesting that you see people wanting to make that transition into like data analyst has risen up the hierarchy a little bit. It actually makes me feel good. I'm glad to hear that because I think it's such a critical role.
Me as well. It could just be that's what my LinkedIn feed feeds me
all
the time, but that's what I've seen.
That's awesome. And so let me ask you too now, what resources are out there that you think people who are interested should be like, where should they look first, right? Is it, are there particular like blogs or, is it like just follow the LinkedIn data scene or like, what are the top things? I think of the LinkedIn data scene, you get a skewed view of what's actually happening out there. But in any case, where would you recommend, like, how should they engage with this to start figuring out what they might want to do?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I had a resource page on my website. I have not updated this in so long because there's so much more available out there. It really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for courses, or if you're just looking for information, or if you're looking for specific data sets. It does. Go-tos, I think I really like if you're just trying to learn foundations. I really dig those like sandbox tutorial sites like W3 Schools. That one is a really good, like, get your hands dirty, understand the fundamentals. And then as far as like getting your hands on data sets, of course, Kaggle's available out there. A lot of those are clean data sets that you can get started with. But the real good comes from those real life data sets. So guaranteed, you probably have your own personal data sets, like we mentioned earlier, that you can leverage. And then also at your company, guaranteed that there are data sets that you can get your hands on too.
And here's a piece of advice from Lynn. So Lynn, we mentioned Day-to-Day Texas. Lynn is the organizer of Day-to-Day Texas. Good to have you here, Lynn, and look forward to hanging out with you in person in January at the conference. But Lynn's piece of advice, hang out with people in person.
Yes.
And that is definitely, if you live in any of the cities with a tech scene, right? Absolutely go do that. What's the scene like in Arizona? Like, you're in the Phoenix area, right?
Yes, and I would think Phoenix being one of the top 5 largest cities, it would be a lot more data people, but we did one of those low-key data meetups. Ben came out, and the Seattle data guy. Sorry.
Yeah.
He came out and we did one, and I was expecting like a whole ton of people. I mean, we still had a good turnout, but still, I feel like with a big city like ours, it would be more.
Yeah, that's actually gives me an idea for a show. We could have Lynn on, and we would interview him like how to build a data scene, because I think that's like Lynn's an expert in throwing parties. I'll tell you that.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it's always interesting to me to hear like which cities, like Salt Lake City has a big scene, which I wouldn't, I wouldn't have thought. But it does. And then, like, well, Joe Reese is out there, and there's a couple other people out there. And like, it kind of makes sense. It didn't spring up overnight. It took a long time for them to, I think our first meetup in Detroit will probably be me, Eric, and Aaron Wilkerson just having a beer at a bar with, 2 or 3 other people. But it's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting to hear like where is there a data scene? Because there's data people everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, even if your city is not a tech hub, it doesn't have like, there aren't a bunch of SaaS startups there. There's still a lot of data work going on. And I think that's good advice, Lynn, is like, check out, can you meet people in person? Because that'll do 2 things for you. You'll learn a lot. And also, if you are looking to make the transition into data, these are the people locally who know where the jobs are and maybe hiring and that sort of thing.
Networking. Yes.
Absolutely. And not just on your phone.
Yes.
Well, that's cool. So we've got about 8 minutes left. Let's see. It's like a gong. You have to bang on it a while to warm it up. There you go.
There you go.
Okay, so we're coming up to the top of the hour. Any last pieces of advice you have for people who are looking to make this transition into data? I think we've covered a lot of the main ones, but like what any last pieces of wisdom you'd like to leave them with?
Again, just to emphasize, to be curious, ask lots of questions. If you are really interested in the data field, go for it. Don't let the things bog you down like imposter syndrome. Make it your best friend, and don't give up. Lots of networking, reach out to people, and good luck on your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Elijah Cummings here. Great job, guys. Amazing content. Thank you for tuning in today, Elijah. It was great to have you here. Lynn mentions there's 600 data scientists in Phoenix. Lynn is the master of the LinkedIn search. To quickly tell you how many people are in any given location with any given area of focus. Great. Well, Monica, it was so great having you on the show here today. Where can people follow you?
You can follow me on LinkedIn. That is where I'm the most active. I also have a YouTube channel and a website.
Yep. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we have linked all of Monica's contact information. Send me the website. I don't think we've linked the website. So send me the website and we'll link that too. Links in the description so you can follow Monica's YouTube channel, LinkedIn, and check out her website. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on the show. It was really fun to have you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Great. All right. So, So, of course, we have to thank, before we let everybody go, today's sponsor, Digital Hive. Digital Hive is an analytics catalog. What is an analytics catalog? It brings all of your front-end assets, the things your end users actually see and use and care about, together into a single place where they can search and they can combine them together. So, you take all the best charts from all the best BI tools, especially those of you who are at big companies. You've got a gazillion BI tools that your end users are interacting with, and you're never going to get rid of them all. Embrace it and bring in a solution like Digital Hive that allows you to combine all of these analytics assets into one place, not just where you can search and find them, but also where you can create new dashboards that take the best bits of, dashboard from Power BI, dashboard from Tableau, bring them together into a single pane of glass where you can say, create a filter that will actually filter each of those visualizations. It's almost like, I mentioned Voltron earlier. Shout out to Voltron right there. It's like Voltron is a super powerful robot that comes together from 5 mighty lions, right? That's what Digital Hive lets you do with your analytics assets. So check it out, digitalhive.com, and check out their upcoming event. You don't have much time. Register now, folks. October 30th through November 1st in New Orleans. Jazz up your analytics. Thank you to Digital Hive once again for sponsoring the show. We like those guys. I've been friends with them for a long time, and it's a really interesting product they have there. So check it out. Okay, Eric. Any last words? I think we do have coming up next week. We've got the team from Zenalytic. This is an LLM-based BI tool. This is very cool.
That'll be interesting.
Very interesting. Bring your questions for that. A lot of excitement, a lot of skepticism, both warranted when it comes to AI and BI. And so that will be an interesting show. They also gave me the best piece of conference swag I have ever received. And I would show it to you right now, except for one of my children stole it and it's not on my desk anymore. And so, but we'll make sure to feature that. It's just seriously very cool. And then the week after that, you're going to want to tune in Rachel Su, who is in charge of Cognos at IBM and has been there for a long time. I know a lot of you who watch us are Cognos folks. We will have Rachel on to talk about the past, present, and future of BI, enterprise BI in general, and Cognos in particular. So you won't want to miss that. And Rachel, of course, is also awesome. She's just really cool. I really like her, and I'm looking forward to interviewing her. Mike Norris wants to know what was the greatest piece of swag. So it's what they call a datamon. So they wrote a Python script that scrapes your LinkedIn, takes the information from it, passes it into a couple different LLMs or an LLM and an AI image generator, and creates a custom-made Pokemon card that is based on you.
He showed me. It's pretty cool.
It's amazing. And then they actually printed it out. And so I have a physical Pokemon card that is me. And the attacks are like based on Super Data Brothers. And it's awesome. I would show again. I really want to show it, but like the heck,
one of your kids is chewing on it right now.
Ah, boy, I hope not. It's probably my son, Sam. Okay. Yeah, it's super cool, Mike. Tune in next week to see it. All right. So any last words for the people before we let them go, Eric?
No, keep it cool.
Yeah, keep it cool. All right. So until next time, I am Ryan.
I am Eric.
And we are the Super Data Brothers. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Goodbye.